Welcome back to Variety Homestead. We're glad you could join us today. In today's episode, we're going to be doing seed starting. So we've been doing seed starting now for, I guess about 4 years, just about after the first year we moved here, on a very small scale, and we still do it on a pretty small scale based on what we plant, because there are a lot of things that get direct sowed and into the ground straight away, and then the other stuff we do seed starting with, and you're going to see that whole setup in just a couple of minutes. So we try to only use heirloom seeds, because when you get into seed saving, which we're just barely getting started into, the hybrids, and of course we don't use GMOs, but the hybrids and things like that are really, for us, we just don't understand how all that works. And although I know you can breed and crossbreed and do all this other stuff, we're really not trying to do that. So we're just purchasing heirloom seeds so that we know that the plant that grows from the seed is as it was designed to grow. So enjoy what you're getting ready to see, and I hope that it brings you some knowledge and some ability that you can apply to your own situation, because you can do this in the suburbs. You can do this on a small scale if you have an apartment balcony. You can absolutely do this yourself. One of the key benefits to doing your own seed starting is the cost. So we have started out buying the plants, planting them, and we spent a couple of $100 that first year. After that, we knew that that wasn't going to be sustainable. So we started looking at seed starting, and that's when we started doing that. And when you look at it today, just a few years later, you're looking at like tomato plants, for example, being almost or right at $7 a piece. And a pack of 25 seeds is like $3. And imagine the yield from a tomato plant. So while you could probably more than pay for the tomato plant if you bought the tomato plant, imagine the scale, the economical scale, if you only paid $3 for 25 seeds. And you had, and by the way, we get darn near 100% yield from those seeds. Every once in a while one will fail, but usually not. So that economic consideration is huge just by itself. And seeds can also be saved for years if you keep them in a good, dry, dark environment. Now, keep in mind that your yield for saved seeds will go down throughout the years. So you, after a couple of years, you may only get, a 50% yield on your seeds, but it's still way more economical than buying them from the store. I'm going to give you a real quick tour of our dining room in our 126-year-old farmhouse out here in Surry County. The reason I'm doing this is because we are getting ready to convert part of this into our annual seed starting venture as we prepare to plant the garden. So moving on in, you see our dining room table. We got some really nice Windsor chairs there on the end. We don't have Windsor chairs all the way around. This is all antique. I'm not sure how old it is. Windsor chairs go back to the 18th century at least, but I don't think these are quite that old. And walking in here, over there in the corner, you can see a genuine Victrola. So this is our hutch. This is not an antique. It is, I think it was manufactured somewhere in the 1960s or 1970s, but it really fits our style. So we're moving on. There's the Victrola again. There's a high chair we got for my granddaughter. There's our fireplace mantle, and the fireplace is currently not functional, and I do have some work to do on that. As you can see, it is it's a little a little worn. And then there's a sewing machine over there that's looks like an antique, but it's not. It's actually got like a 1970s sewing machine in it, but it does really work. So then you're moving around in here, and that's was a gift, Christmas gift, that that map on the wall of Surry County. over here in this cabinet, this cabinet was a very small hutch, belonged to my wife's grandmother when she passed away. It was one of the few things that she had, and Debbie was interested in it. So what Debbie keeps in here is overflow of spices. Some of these spices she's grown herself, some of the spices and herbs. Some of it obviously has been purchased, and this is our stockpile, quote, of various spices and herbs that Debbie uses to refill what's in the kitchen that we use. And what we're going to do here is over here in this area right here, in this general area that I'm sweeping across right now, I'm going to be putting some folding tables and some lights, some grow lights in here, and we'll pick up when I start getting that installed. The dining room has been transformed. Here's our setup, and you can see the grow lights, you can see the tables. These are just 5 foot, not 6 foot, but 5 foot folding tables. You can use 6 foot tables. You just have to build a rig like I've built here, and I'll show you that in just a second. That'll span the entire distance. So I just took cheap, actually scrap plywood and blocks, took a piece of 2x4 and took some more scrap there. And then I split a 2x4 and just made 3 of these so they would go between the table. And come down here on the end, you got the same setup. There's a daisy chain feature with these grow lights. Now these grow lights were not very expensive. They came off of Amazon, and they are very easy to install. They come in parts, so you do have to install them somewhat. And they're daylight grow lights. I don't know if, let me see if I can get under there and so you can see that. Yeah, I think you can see that. And these lights are real easy to set up. It's tedious because it takes a little bit because you got to kind of put them together every time. But they come with all the parts you need. They have to be something like 18, I think it's either 18 or 20 inches above your future little seedlings. So this is our setup here. And the next move is to start getting the seedlings into the dirt. And we're going to pause for just a second. We use these steam table pans, as you can see there. These particular pans came from BJ's, but I would imagine Costco or Sam's Club or whatever big box store you have in your neighborhood might handle those. I think this is like a 15 pack. Now, we used the same pans for 5 years. And they are shot. They're just all bent up and shot all to pieces. And you'll understand why we're going to use these pans in a bit. But this is what we do to put our little seeds in. These aluminum pans have the added benefit of very, very well reflecting the light that is shining down on the seedlings. So we think that's a plus. A couple of other things when you're doing your setup here is Debbie's got these little cups, and we reuse those over and over. You can see these little cups come from a couple of various sources. And we've got seed starting soil, and we've got this is organic seed starting Jiffy mix. And then we've got some potting soil. And yes, this stuff was purchased. And this is what we're going to put in the pans. When you consider that the seed starting soil and the potting mix and things like that costs a little bit of money, but a little goes a long way when you're putting them in those little cups. The other thing is that when you use these aluminum pans here, is you can actually pour water into the pan once the seeds start to sprout and water them from underneath, because the cups that they're sitting in have holes in the bottom. And so you can actually put water and then water the plants from the bottom, which is a pretty cool thing. And another thing you want to be aware of is do not fertilize these little seeds and even the little seedlings that come up. You want to wait until you actually plant them in the ground if you're going to use fertilizer, because they're just not strong enough at that point to handle it. It can cause some bad things to happen to the little sprouting plants. This is a combination of the seed starting soil and potting soil. So what Debbie's doing here is just mixing it all up really good to sort of get it all rolled in there, kind of like you're doing a food recipe. So while Debbie's doing this, I'm going to give you some fun facts, like what we're planting, how much we're planting of what. You're looking at those cups that Debbie's using there. These cups have holes in the bottom. So like I said a couple minutes ago, you can water after things start to sprout up. You can actually water just by pouring water in the bottom of the aluminum pan. So basically we're going to plant to start seeds for the following items. We're going to do German tomatoes. And I say German tomatoes because they're just a different breed from what we've been planting. We planted Germans last year, and we just ate those fresh. They were outstanding. But we planted like 40 plants of Romas, so we have enough tomato sauce and paste powder probably to last us for the next 5 years. So we're going to skip the Romas this year, and we're just going to go with 5 or 6 plants of the German tomatoes. So we're going to plant those. We're also going to do 4 okra. We're going to do 4 green peppers. We're going to do 4 cayenne peppers. Now, we don't eat those, but we straight out, but we can use them in things. We're going to plant 3 jalapenos and 2 banana peppers. Now, the banana peppers, they really yield very well. So do the jalapenos. So we don't have to plant a ton of those to get what we're trying to do. Now, as far as the herbs go, so we've got a small herb garden, but Debbie's going to actually seed start the following items while she's doing this. She's going to do chamomile. She's going to do mullein, coleus, parsley, echinacea, primrose, marshmallow, hyssop, basil, bee balm, feverfew, and cilantro. So those items are going to be planted in the herb garden. She's going to do a pot or plant peppermint and spearmint. She's actually going to do kind of like a direct sow. She's going to do those outside in pots, either on or right beside the herb garden. And the reason for that is because peppermint and spearmint can absolutely take everything in the world over. Other things that we're going to plant, but we're going to direct sow those, or we're going to do limas, green beans, pinto beans, corn, onions, garlic, potatoes, and I already mentioned the pintos. So those things we're going to direct sow in the garden. And to give you an idea of where we are, like I said, I think we're in zone 7B. So our plan is to plant the first week of May. Now, around here they say that the last frost is on average around April 15th or so. We've been bit by that a couple of years in a row. So we started planting the first week of May, and everything seems to be working out really well. So when you do these seeds, you're going to need to do stuff like your peppers, your tomatoes, okra, your herbs, and any flowers that you're going to plant. You want to do those about 6 weeks prior to actually planting them. And 2 weeks from now, Debbie will start doing the cucumbers and the squash seeds. And that's because they don't need but about 4 weeks to get mature enough to be able to put those out into the direct or into the garden itself. And the other thing that she does is she's planting 2 seeds per pot. So what you won't have to do is transplant into larger pots. A lot of folks use little teeny cups to start them in, and then they'll move them to a slightly bigger pot. And you can do that if you want, but by doing it this way, we don't have to transplant. And then you can take them, when you take them out and put them in the garden, you can just pull them out and drop them right in. Now, her method for doing this, she just does basically a dimple with her finger. And that dimple is not very deep. And then she'll drop the seed in the dimple, and then she will just scoop little bits of the soil up around that and maybe add, part of a handful of soil on top of that. So you don't really need to plant these things deep in there. You need to water these things every day until, Debbie uses a spray bottle until they're about 1 inch tall. And the rule here is, or what we do is, you want to keep them moist, but not drenched. You don't want to drown them. You just want to keep them moist. Hence the spray bottle versus pouring, and it's going to be too early to pour the water into the aluminum pan anyway, because the cups, as you can see, are, I don't know, it looks to me like they're about maybe 4 or 5 inches deep. And once they get 1 inch tall, you can start watering from the bottom, and you can just pour the water into the aluminum tray. And this allows the roots to grow stronger and prevents the starts from becoming real leggy. Leggies when they splay all out into these long stems, and they're leggy, and then you don't really have a great opportunity for them to get strong and healthy, because they get so leggy they just droop right on over. Now, something about the grow lights, and we've turned the grow lights off so you'd be able to see better what we're doing here. But when you do this, you want to keep the grow lights on for about 16 hours a day, 12 to 16 hours, 12 hours at a minimum, preferably 16. Now look, most people are up for at least 16 hours a day. So you get up in the morning, you turn these bad boys on, and you just run them till you go to bed at night. And about a full week before they are going to be put in the ground, you want to start taking them outside. So what we do is we take a table outside, or even sit them on the front porch and let them sit out there for about 8 hours a day. And what this does is it gives them the time to start acclimating to the outdoor environment, and they get breeze and they get sunlight. You don't want them in direct sun the entire time, but we do ours for about 8 hours a day, and then we bring them back in, and so that way they're slowly getting used to the environment out there. So you typically have less loss that way, or it's been our experience anyway. One thing I wanted to not neglect to mention was, when you are putting these things into the little containers there, is that you want to make some kind of a label. You can use painter's tape. We've done that. Debbie happened to have these labels laying around, so she's labeling each one of those so that you know what they are. Because I'm going to tell you right now, when you're growing certain things like squash plants and a couple of other things, when they start to grow up, you cannot tell them apart, and until they get to a point, and then you're all over the place when you actually go to plant your garden. So that's a good thing to remember, is label those things so that you know what it is you've got where. Another thing Debbie does is she always plants several extra, because there have been times when you might lose one or two and you've got a few extra backup. And these things typically start coming up in 7 to 10 days. And if they're not coming up, if you're getting absolutely zero after 7 to 10 days, then you're going to need to replant so that you can still, stay within the timeline or enough of the timeline to make it worth your while. So there's the dimples. You're just putting a little dimple in there with your finger, and then she's just dropping a couple of seeds in, and then she just basically covers those up. Again, you don't have to go deep. Just get it right below the soil level, and then just push it all together and cover that stuff up. So we're mostly done, really. This is how it looks all set up. The empty table over there is going to be cucumbers and squash. But like I said earlier, we need to wait 2 weeks because they don't take as long. And we want to get everything in the ground on the same weekend, last weekend of April, first week of May, to make sure that that we don't have to worry about a frost. This is not the end of the story with the seed starting, of course. We're only 1 day in. However, what we're going to do is we're going to end here because of the time of the year that it is, being mid-March. If you're in Zone 7B or probably anything near close to Zone 7B, you're going to want to get your seeds started so that you can get ahead of the game. And then in about end of April, first part of May, put them in the ground. Check back in another week or so for another installment when we see how these little seeds are starting to sprout up. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to be planting we're going to be seed starting squash and peppers. So check back soon, and thanks for watching, and thanks for visiting Variety Homestead.